Welcome to Rich Your Soul, Matthew Mitchell. It's great to have you join us today.
Thank you so much, Rocky. I'm excited to be with you. Thanks for the opportunity.
And I'm excited to learn from you too. We always like to start at the beginning. What was it like when you were growing up, and how much did your family and school teach you about money?
Well, it was a great upbringing. I lived in rural Mississippi, the east central part of the state, in a small town, Louisville, Mississippi, and I was the youngest of four boys. And my parents, John and Carol Mitchell, very, very hardworking people. My dad was in the manufacturing business with a brick manufacturing plant that his family had owned for some generations, and it had gotten to a spot where he didn't own. He owned a very small share of it and was doing a lot of the work. And I remember. He was the plant manager, so it was almost like growing up with a doctor that was an ER doc. I can remember him in the middle of the night getting up. We had a small house, and him walking down the hall going to fix something at the plant. And my mom, they were really organized and diligent on trying to raise us in a healthy environment and keep us healthy. And so three square meals a day and things like that. It was a very simple upbringing. It was lo-fi back in those days, and we were out in the middle of the boondocks playing sports all the time. And so there were lessons around money from my parents as far as, don't spend more than you make, and save and give to the church, and be responsible with money. And so, I look back on it now, we didn't have a lot, but the focus was just on kind of what you needed. And I thought it was a great way so I never was really attached to money growing up as I look back on it now. So I think it was a healthy upbringing as far as money went. Nothing in school really. There was maybe some business course you maybe could take in high school, but I was playing athletics all the time and I didn't take that course. So not a lot of education around it, which there should be. I think it's very important to get some financial literacy and some knowledge as a young person. Very, very important.
It's funny. So many people go into athletics, kids, with the hopes of making it big, and yet none of them have learned the business side of athletics.
Yeah.
How to get the contracts, once you get the contract, how to keep your money, because it's shocking the number of people who make it and get big money, and it doesn't last very long, unfortunately.
Well, my experience coaching at the highest level of college basketball, where you're observing athletes in your department, whether it be a football player or a men's basketball player, or a top draft choice in the MLB or something along those lines, where there are millions of dollars that are on the front end, but it's $3 or $4 or $5 million. And when you are a teenager, it sounds like all the money in the world and that you're set for life. I've heard that over and over and over, set for life. And they don't realize that $5 million is not $5 million. You get a big chunk of that taken out, and it gets closer to $3 million or $2.5 million, and then you start spending and it's even less. So it really is. It's when you hear that as a young person, I think it can be intoxicating away, and I think that's why you hear all of the tough stories, because people aren't educated. And so, hey, this is really a windfall based on a temporary condition in your life, which is an athletic ability, which fades for everyone. So you really need to be tactical, and you need to be thoughtful, and you need to be literate, and you need to know what's going on. And so it's unfortunate when those opportunities are missed. And I think as a college coach, I think it's really a part of my responsibility to teach financial literacy and try to equip our students and our players for life and operating in a financially responsible and fruitful way.
So do you actually do that? Do you actually teach them financials?
We have Financial Fridays. We try to touch finances once a week and get that in their mind, and the simple concepts. I am a coach, but not a financial coach, but I have had to deal with finances, and I have seen these stories, Rocky, of how missed opportunity, how badly it hurts. You don't have anything, then you have a lot, and then you don't plan, and then you end up not having anything again. That's a painful arc to travel. And so we just try our best to stick with the fundamentals, save, invest, understand taxes and understand the value of how much things are going to cost, how much your housing is going to cost, what your car is going to cost, budgeting, those kinds of things that we try to just make them aware of and try to steer them into doing well with what they have now, because in the changing landscape of college athletics, they have more than they've ever had. I don't care what sport you're playing, you have access to more. And so we're trying to guide them to good outcomes.
And it's true. If you get a $5 million signing bonus, I'm guessing by the time you pay your agent and taxes, you're probably at about half of that. And the reality is, with $2.5 million, the only way that's going to last a lifetime is if you never spend a penny of it, which
That's right.
I don't think any of them are ready to make that commitment of never spending the money at
Right.
all.
Yeah. Yeah. And the people who have good enough guidance around them understand you take that signing bonus, you don't spend it, you invest it, and then you live off your contract and you live below your means. And so it's a real simple formula, but it's not easy. It's like a lot of things in life. There's some simple stuff out there that's not always easy to do, and it's very tempting to go buy a card that costs six figures and reward yourself. And it's a challenge. And so that's where I think any of us who have access to mentoring and helping young people and trying to explain these financial realities to them, I think it's useful, and it's incumbent upon us to use our influence the best we can to help them make good decisions.
It's funny because every so often you'll see a story about the one sports player who does live way below their means, and they make it out like it's a little weird, and it's always kind of funny. But those are the ones who will always have the money towards the end. And as you said, it's a short career, and people don't realize that, especially when you're young. You don't realize how quick it goes by. And then the gravy train ends.
Yeah, we try to explain to them if they're so in our sport of women's basketball, if they're a great player and their career extends into their 30s and they have a 10-year or 12-year career and they're done at 32 or 34, life expectancy, they have another 50 years on the planet. And no value as a basketball player. And so what do you do then? So that's why we're always trying to teach leadership and to teach, personal responsibility for your life, because, once you are there an adult, you have to make some good decisions. And so we really try to equip and try to help develop the proper thinking around how to lead themselves well once they're out of a team environment. You still have to be a great leader of yourself and make really, really great decisions. So gosh, as I'm sure a lot of our people listening or watching today, if you've ever experienced any financial difficulty, that's a stress that is just very difficult to live with. You make some bad decisions but I just always think the emotional toll of trying to live in debt and trying to live above your means is just a really, really just not a pleasant way to go through life. So we focus hard the best that we can to try to equip our players with the tools to be able to get that done so they can navigate life successfully after their athletic ability's gone.
So how did you get into the world of basketball coaching?
Well, it was interesting. I was pretty ambitious in my early teens, and I had tried. I'd majored in business, and I'd had a really successful businessman talk me out of coaching and saying you can't make any money in coaching that he had coached. And then he became very wildly successful in construction, and he became a multimillionaire. And there weren't a lot of those people around in rural Mississippi back in the late 80s and 90s, and so he was a clearly very successful guy. And he said, hey, I'd go a business route. I'd try to get into some business. And so I sort of followed that advice and tried a few different things in my early 20s. And I just was not happy at all. I was pretty miserable. I wasn't good at any of the things that I was doing. I tried the construction business and I was not very good at that. And so one night I was lamenting to my high school basketball coach. I said, Coach Farrell Rigby, great man and great mentor to me. I said, I just feel like I'm spinning my wheels. And he said, I always thought you'd make a good coach, Matthew. Why don't you come out and help me this year and help assist me with the team? And let's see what you think about coaching. And Rocky, the first time I can remember walking out on that court, as my high school coach's assistant coach, it's like, this is it. This is awesome. And so I went on from there to become a high school coach for 4 years. And so how I got into college coaching is I would I was so thirsty and hungry for knowledge to learn how to coach. All I'd ever done is played, really how to teach and how to develop a player's skills and how to strategize during a basketball game. I would go and work summer camps and just sit down with whatever coaches would sit down and spend time with me. A great piece of fortune in my career, I was at the University of Tennessee women's basketball camp for the great Pat Summitt, all-time winningest coach at the time. She was just phenomenal, had won, several national championships. So I started working her camp, and after 4 summers, she hired me as her graduate assistant, and that just really changed the trajectory of my career. And that's how I got into coaching women's college basketball, and it's been an incredible, incredible career, and I've learned a lot.
And it's funny how much the money has changed in sports, and it's changed in a lot of different areas. If you knew that wave and you could catch it early, that's great. But a lot of times you don't know what the wave is and how it's going to play out and where those opportunities come. Because I remember, when we were young, sports players didn't make much money at all back in the day.
Right.
Everybody else did, but not them.
Yeah.
And it continues to change. And as you said, even now at the college level, high school level, it's changing. You got to figure out what works for you.
Exactly. And that was what was so great for me, is that, the moment I stopped putting my focus on making money and just started to get into some place where, I think you need 3 things to chase something meaningful and to be something that you can find that can be good at. And I think you have to have talent, and I think you have to have skill and competency, and you have to have the energy. So those 3 things, whatever I'm doing, I have to get to a yes. And so I didn't have the talent to be a great, building contractor. I didn't have a mathematical mind. I didn't see the angles. It was too slow. But I had talent for understanding people and strategizing in basketball, and so I had enough talent. And I think that's where if we get into something because we're trying to make money and we don't have enough talent for that, you can acquire more skill, you can acquire more competency, and you can absolutely impact your energy with how the choices that you make in life. But I think that's where I was in a spot that was going to lead me to underperformance if I didn't get into a spot where I could let my talent flourish. And we all have different sets of talents that we're given. And I think that was a good step for me as I got into a spot where I could use my natural strengths and learn how to be a success.
And that's important. It's finding that, and then finding the mix of where does that play best with.
Mm-hmm.
And then on top of that, if you've got the desire, you will over time win against others because other people won't try as hard as you.
That's right.
And so that desire is important. And I think the 4th piece, though, is you can have talent, you can be good at it, in the things that you mentioned. But if people aren't willing to pay for it, you can't make the money.
That's
and
true.
There are a lot of people who chase things that they love and that everyone tells them is wonderful, and they get really good at it. But the people are like, yeah, I'm not paying for that.
Hey, now that's true, Rocky. That's an important part that I left out. Thank goodness that we were able to figure that part out. But it's so true. Yeah, you do have to find where that solves a problem for people, and they're willing to pay for it.
Yes, people are not willing to. It's funny because my original when we started this podcast, and even before that, it was showing people how to build wealth. But people weren't willing to pay me because I wasn't showing them how to build wealth this weekend. I said, I can show you how to be a millionaire in 10 years. And people are like, nah, that's too long.
Right.
So, they ended up, they're still broke, but that's okay. And that's what it comes down to. So we're here to talk about your book. What inspired you to write the book, Ready to Win?
Well, I spent the first 25 years of my coaching career really acquiring the knowledge around how powerful leadership, what an important part of performance leadership is, which led me to build a leadership system that I used in 2 Division I college basketball programs. And it was a very simple set of principles that we wanted to be about and live every day. And it's called the winning tools, because every year you're building your team. And so I found this in business as well. Every fiscal year we get some knowledge from the year before, and if we had some great results, unfortunately those those don't guarantee next year. We have to do it again. We have to build that year. And so that in athletics, I like that notion of having tools to go out and build the team each year. And I learned these from my parents, real simple: honesty, hard work, discipline was the basis of the system. And over the years, I was really able to build that out into a system that is defined and that you can teach and that you can show people what to do. And under each one of the tools, honesty, hard work, discipline, there's a pillar point. There are 3 pillar points that help us teach that. And so one of the pillar points of hard work is preparation. And I was in a group and we were talking about book ideas, and we were also talking about, I was teaching them my system, and they got so fascinated with the preparation part. And they said, "Coach, this is amazing." And I jokingly, I said, "I think there's a book here." And they said, "There's absolutely a book here." And so my first book was Winning Tools, just putting it all out there for people. And I did all this. I took a break from coaching college basketball for 4 years, and I built a consulting company, and we've had great success with, and that we've gone in and we've used this system to help people increase their performance. And so that's kind of how it was. Just it was out of some lessons that I was teaching around preparation. And so it is so vital, the idea of preparation. So ready to win. Everybody wants to win. That's not the issue. The issue is, are you ready to win? How great leaders succeed through preparation. And I've been around some great leaders that used preparation to their advantage, that got them into positions. What we teach, preparation will powerfully position you to win. It gets you into position to win. You still have to go out and execute, but you do yourself a big favor if over time you're the most prepared person in the room. You are going to execute, and you're going to not have 100% winning percentage, but you can have a very high success rate. And I really believe the more that you can access preparation and develop into a level 5 preparer, I think you increase your chances for success. And that's what's definitely shown true in my career.
It seems easy to prepare in sports in the sense that, we have a defined game. But in the world of business, it's kind of harder to prepare, I would think. And I'm just curious, when you look at the world of business, what is involved in preparation? Like, what does that even look like? Because I think for a lot of people that might be confusing. What do I need to do?
Yeah, so that's what we do in the book is we really try to take there's so many parallels, Rocky, between competitive sports and competing at your highest level of your business. And it's just about identifying the areas in your business that are pushing the performance. And so that's the way that you do it. You break it down. If you're looking at a basketball game and you're just watching it casually and they're just kind of going up and down the court and you're not really digging into what these details are, you can say, well, what's the easy thing is who won and who lost. The scoreboard's there. So the scoreboard does help you kind of keep track. But how we break it down in the book is you've got to find the pieces of your business, and everyone's important, but what are the priorities that really move the needle and make the sale and create the revenue and drive your business to be successful financially? And so in basketball, the number one rule that Dr. Naismith came up, the ball needed to go in the peach basket. So the peach basket's hanging there and the ball's got to go in the basket. And so the offensive player who can score gets and is the flashy kind of person on there that everyone knows. But so what is that in your business? Is that your sales team? And so they're important. They've got to step into the spotlight and perform. But also there's all these other people that don't get their name in the news article on the internet, and they're kind of the unsung people, but they're extremely important. And so defining everyone's roles, attaching the value that everyone brings, and everyone has an important piece to play. And so that the way that we've been able to do it is that concept of teamwork of, listen, I had the number one player in the draft, in the WNBA draft, Ryan Howard, and she was the most gifted scorer, and she still is. She's an all-star in the WNBA. And so we needed her to shoot the shot, but we also needed Kiki McKinney to set the screen to get her open. And they didn't write in the headlines, Kiki McKinney sets 10 great screens tonight. They would say, no, Ryan Howard scores 30 points. Well, Ryan Howard never scored 30 points 1-on-5, ever. And so I think really teaching the concept of where everyone has value, but everyone has a different role to play. And so as you can define that for your business, you can start your preparation. What does everyone need to do to fulfill their extremely important role so the team wins?
How do you deal with the ego of that? Right? Because if you think about it, the person scoring is the one that's getting all the accolades. And yet, all the people who are making it happen in that situation are kind of ignored and they may not feel as good about it. And I'm sure the same thing happens in business.
Well, what we do in basketball is that the better you do your job, that we want to get recognized as a team. But there's great value in you being a part of a successful program. And so now we were able to build the University of Kentucky into a nationally known program. And so when any of those players, and as time goes on, any of those players are asked, where do you play basketball? They say, I played basketball at the University of Kentucky. And people go, wow, you played at Kentucky. They don't say, could I see your stat sheet from Kentucky? Could you tell me how many points you scored, what you did? And they're just like, wow, that's incredible. There's great value in being around success. Life is not proportionate or fair at all times, and some people score more points, some people make more money. But you having, and we try to talk about this in the book, excellence is its own reward. It's a mindset that you should have, that you're just trying to be the very best you can be. And when we try to compare ourselves to other people, that's a recipe for feeling bad, for feeling less than, for being let down. Because when I can recognize what my unique talent, what my unique gift is, and I can bring it at an excellent level, I'm going to feel great about that. If I pay attention to what everybody else is doing, what everybody else is making, and all those things, that comparison, we call it the comparison curse. You're setting yourself up for a lot of heartache. And so we talk to our team. Nobody's going to do it alone. People have different roles. We value everyone, but everyone's not exactly the same. And in business, that's the way businesses are set up too, is that different jobs are rewarded financially differently. And so I think that's incumbent on the leadership to really explain that to people. And if I can really feel great about what I'm doing, and then the leader of the team values me and gives me some financial incentives and absolutely honors what I'm doing, I think that's how you avoid those incohesive moments that are lacking teamwork. I think it's really important as a leader that you're building that culture where people understand that they're valued, and some of that's financial, but a lot of that also can just be acknowledgement and being able to walk into an environment every day where I know my effort's going to be honored.
And it is about building culture. And I know in business, building culture is extremely important. When you don't have a good culture, people don't take responsibility for their position, don't deliver, and there's not a sense of accountability for that, it's a problem. I'm a big fan of scoreboards. I'm not talking about in sports, I'm talking about in business. And not only should there be a scoreboard for the financials, but there should be a scoreboard for how people are performing within their particular goals, so that people know, hey, am I doing well? Am I not doing well? And it gets rid of the attitude of the constant excuses and all of that. And it keeps everybody moving in the same direction. And I'm just shocked that there aren't more scoreboards in the business world as there is in the sports world.
Yeah, it's interesting, as I've been in the business world the last 4 years working and observing companies and different teams, and a lot of teams that asked me to come in were, maybe it's triage and they're having some crisis of culture, or other teams, they're wanting a buttress to boost and just, strengthen what they already have. And I always find that one of the real culprits is a lack of communication at the top of, this is who we are. This is who we are first. So there's all sorts of volatility in life. The thing that can ground us is our principles. So what I meet with our team, we're going to be honest, and that's going to start with me. We're going to be hardworking, so we're going to give the effort, and we're going to define these things, and we're going to have discipline. And so when you can start to live those things, but that takes tremendous investment and communication from the leader. And there's all sorts of scoreboards that you can identify around that. And but teaching people, equipping them how to grade themselves in real time, is this honest? Does this require more effort? Does this require a disciplined decision that maybe is not benefiting me in the short term, and I've got to work some extra hours and I'm going to miss out something that I want to do, but in the long term, that's a disciplined decision. It's going to work out for me. And the way that we try to help people lead them to that, those are the winning tools. Well, the winning tools were born out of the losing tools. The losing tools are complaints, excuses, and laziness. And so as hard as we have to, as diligent as we have to be to live the winning tools every day to just get us into a position where we may have some success, we do know the losing tools, complaints, excuses, laziness, that'll guarantee failure. I've never seen a successful business that complained their way to the top or made excuses or were lazy. And so I think that when you get that framework, you can start grading people, and people can also start tracking what they're doing. And that's where you can really start to ignite your culture.
And that's a big part of it. And what I've noticed is if you don't hold somebody accountable, everyone else gets mad.
Oh gosh, it is.
And then it starts to go downhill. And it's funny how often the person in charge doesn't realize how much of a problem it is until usually they find out after the person leaves or is let go. And then they're like, thank God you did that. And they're like, why didn't any of you tell me that there was a problem here? It's easier to see on the court because you're watching the game. It's harder to see in a corporate place because you're not always seeing what's going on as clearly. There's no replay clock, right? Or makes it a little harder.
Yeah, that's where that idea of accountability, we start with ourselves and we learn that, but then we create a culture and as a leader, my leadership team has to help me know what I don't know. There's no other way to get it. And so so I have to let my leadership team, listen, this is what we're doing. This is what we're looking for. And if we're not getting it, we have to call that out. That's the leader setting the standard of the accountability is so important. We have to be accountable to ourselves, to the company, to each other. And the only way we're ever going to come to a solution is if we know what the issue is. And the issues have to be surfaced. And that is part of a healthy culture. That is, being able to confront challenges head on, being able to surface any issues that are going on. There's no possibility of keeping anyone accountable if you don't do that part of it. And so that it is, to me, again, a daily commitment of where I'm creating an atmosphere where we don't want any complaints. We said that, but we do want concerns. So complaints, I'm just dissatisfied. I'm just negative about it. But a concern, the major part of that definition, if you look it up in Webster's, it talks about importance. So a concern is something that's very important. And everything that's important, a lot of what's important are the things that aren't going right. And so when we avoid those or we fail to confront those, that we're setting the team up for underperformance. And so I try to teach our leadership team, we're in the problem solving business. We are in the we're troubleshooters, we're problem solvers. And so solve what you can. You can't just come bring everything to me, but the things that are really important that you don't feel are moving there and that only the leader can speak to, you have to surface those things. And I have to accept my responsibility as being the leader, and you've got to bring them. And so that's a culture of accountability. And the quickest way for something to go south, and even if the performance is up to standard or your bottom line still looks good, over time, the frustration that a team feels when there's no accountability, or the star player gets to get by with something that the rest of us don't get to get by, or the star or the leading salesperson gets treated differently than the person who is running all of our accounting. It just creates a miserable atmosphere, that lack of accountability. And so it's incumbent for me as a leader to make sure that I am nurturing and fostering and validating that atmosphere every day, that there must be shared accountability in our team.
I like it. One of the things in the world of sports is everyone is working on their physical muscles, but you talk about mental muscles, and you say driving towards excellence is like a muscle you building in your mind. The more you work it out, the stronger the muscle becomes. Do you find a lot of people think of building their mind as a muscle and focus on doing that? Or are we more focused on the physical side of that?
Yeah, that's one of my goals in the book, is to talk about the power of a shift in your mind. A mindset is what I'm setting my thoughts on. And it is such, there are these simple, they're not always easy, but they're simple mindset shifts. And the one, about strengthening your mind, it really helps when you can give an example of a simple shift. And so I went down a path of trying to be the best college basketball coach in the world. We were being so successful, but we were not number one. We were not winning the national championship. And we had brought the Kentucky program from absolute low performance over decades, low performance, spotty here and there. There would be some success. And we took it from that to one of the top 10 programs in the country. But we ran into the University of Connecticut 2 years in a row, and they were the best. They were the best. They were in a 118 game win streak. And my mind got on, that's what I want to be. I want to be the best. And I was measuring where we were to where we were wanting to go. And that caused a lot of frustration for me and a lot of leadership mistakes, because I was comparing myself to the best. And so a mindset shift, if I'm comparing to everyone else, my energy is focused outward, and there's a great chance that my energy allocation is going to be improperly deployed. And we all have just so much energy. And so the simple shift that I was able to make in my mind is to go from being the best to my best. Instead of chasing perfection, I started chasing excellence. And so every day when I wake up, I don't think about being perfect today, but I do think, because perfection paralyzes me. It slows me down, and I'm thinking about all the things that I have to get right. Where now I wake up thinking about excellence, and I'm exhilarated at all the opportunities that are out there today. And so I'm going to strive for that level of excellence, to do my best to learn what I can learn today, to give the effort I can give today, to move the ball forward as much as I can. And that is what an example. If I do that day after day after day, now I'm starting to strengthen my mindset that I've traded in perfection for excellence, and excellence is extremely rewarding. And we will start to see fantastic results. And who knows, one of these days we may be number one. You never know. But as long as we're living a life of excellence, we're going to be as successful as we need to be. I've found there's just tremendous intrinsic value in that makes life so much more enjoyable. That goes along with all of the business and the financial success we can have.
There was a book called The Gap and the Gain.
Yeah.
And it kind of resonated. We're always looking up at the top of the mountain, looking at the gap. But when you look at how well you've done yourself and how much you've improved, it does shift your mindset, and it does help you have that better conversation and so forth. It's funny because it was a line in the book that jumped out to me, or maybe it was just the title of the chapter. I need to tame the conversation in my head.
Mm.
Most people aren't having the talk about that conversation, are they?
Well, here's what most people aren't doing. Exactly. They're not having the conversation. They're allowing I call it, and what I learned from some great coaching that I received is my inner critic, is what I call it, is that negative voice. So I have had this for a while. I had this belief that I would be successful in coaching, which was an overarching belief, like we'll get there. But along the way, a lot of negativity, like, what in the world are you doing? You'll never get there. You're never going to get there. What makes you think you're good enough to get there? That's that negative voice that really, what I've learned, is just trying to protect us from risk. And so for us to accomplish something that is meaningful and that is aspirational, there's just going to be risk involved. We're going to have to put ourselves out there. We're going to have to compete, and we're going to have to figure things out, and we're going to have to push ourselves past a point of being comfortable. And I think that inner critic for me was just always trying to keep me like, this is enough. You're fine. You don't need to go try to aspire for anything else. And so the taming that conversation in the head is not, because I found this, that I used to say, I'm just not going to listen to it. I'm not going to listen to that voice in my head, and I'm going to shut it down. Not effective for me. What I've learned is that when that thought comes in, I just recognize that it's just there, but it's signaling that maybe we're entering into a risky spot here, or a risk we're going to have to take. And there's a difference between taking some calculated risk we have to, and then behaving risky. There's a difference there. But there's just some risk that I'm going to have to put myself out there. And if I look back at my track record, and I'll be honest with myself, I have accomplished enough to know a track record that I can take this risk and I can put myself out there. And the worst thing that can happen now is that I just have more information. I learned a lesson. If I fall short of the goal now, I've just tried to convert all of those, Rocky, into lessons instead of losses. And it's another mindset shift. It's another way to look at this experience that we're all going through in life. And we get to choose if we're of sound mind and body, and we have capability of making those choices healthy enough to do that. That's really what it comes down to. We can choose to view this journey as something that's exciting and it's unknown and it's full of risks that we have to take, but that'll be okay if we take them, and no matter what the outcome is, we will have learned something and we'll be better for it. So that's what I'm trying to get across in the book, that when we think about being great with our preparation, we can't get bogged down and let the inner critic say, this is too bold, this is too big of a plan to prepare for, and let's just keep this in a safe spot. And that's what I'm trying to encourage people to do, is just believe in themselves and know that they have a track record that allows them to begin and to develop a plan that can be moving them towards success.
They can. You don't have to play small, right?
Yep.
Someone's got to win.
Yep.
Why not us?
That's right. That's right.
That's always
It's
the
just like
attitude.
in this changing landscape now. I'm at the University of Houston after a few years away from college basketball, and it's totally changed. And there's a lot of really scary changes, from a financial standpoint, and people don't really have it figured out. And there's a lot of litigation going on, and people don't know exactly how this thing's going to shake out, but it's different. But this is what I tell everybody: somebody's going to figure out how to succeed in this industry, and so let's go for it. Let's show up every day, and let's be honest, hardworking, disciplined, and let's put our best foot forward and strive for excellence. And somebody will figure it out, and we plan on being those people.
That's what you got to do. There was another quote in the book that I also found interesting. What did you mean when you said, I learned there was no secret?
Oh, yeah. Well, so I'm coaching middle school and high school basketball, and I'm teaching social studies in a little bitty town in Mississippi, Lexington, Mississippi, population about 2,000 people, little bitty farming community and small school. Could not have been further away from the bright lights of big time athletics, just couldn't be further away. And I'm watching all these people. I'm watching, the great coaches, a Pat Riley, a Pat Summit, Bill Parcells, whoever that was, when I was coming through, the great coaches, and you're listening to them, and you're seeing this success that they're having, and you're just thinking there's got to be some secret to it that I don't know, that I wish I could get around them, and if I could just get around them, I could learn the secret and I could unlock it, and I could get a key, and I could unlock all this success. And so, to my incredible surprise and delight, I get hired by one of these people that I just am convinced she has the secret, because she's the most successful basketball coach in women's college basketball ever. And so I show up and I start working with her every day, and I start to find out there's literally no secret. It is because she comes in every day and she has a plan, and she's prepared, and she's focused, and she is consistently focused and executing the plan over and over and over and over. And that is, I'll let everyone know, that's not a secret. You now know what it is. And of course, she had some gifts, and she had some charisma, and she had some things that made her, the greatest coach ever. But maybe I don't have that, or maybe I don't have the charisma, and maybe I don't have, the some natural talent that she had. But what I can do is I can show up every day prepared, and I can show up every day focused on what I need to do and what the team needs to do, and I communicate that well, and I just do it day after day after day. And that's the secret that I was looking for. And the secret was, I thought it was going to be one sentence or one day or one tip or something like that. And that's what I meant when I write about that in the book, that it's really about, if you will learn how to prepare over time, and you're well prepared every day, and you have done all the work, you know what you need to win, you know what needs to happen to win, and you prepare your people and your team and yourself day in and day out, that's when you're going to start unlocking that sustained success that we all desire.
And you talk about that a little bit in the book. And what you talk about is creating short-term, incremental, smaller goals that create success essentially, because when you start to win, you keep reward yourself and go, hey, I can do this. And so then you can start to work towards bigger goals. And then the things that you may think is unachievable become achievable. And then the second part of that is always measurements. And it's funny, but people don't like numbers, they don't like math, or they just don't want to be graded, I guess, in a sense. They don't want to be held accountable. But when you put that together, it's pretty powerful.
Yeah, I think we are so conditioned to the report card coming out and the grade coming out, and we are just conditioned that to be so fearful of the grade coming, because whether we didn't do enough on the front end or whether the material was just so hard, we don't want to get that bad grade. And so I think when we get out of the academic, maybe there's so much scar tissue from the academic part of our life that evaluation scares a lot of people. It's scary because so many times if you fall short, there's some consequence. There's going to be consequences if you don't make good grades. Like it was always framed negatively. And so I think that's where the leader has to say, hey, the evaluation is a gift. The information we gain, whether it's right, wrong, met the mark, missed the mark, it's all a gift. All of the evaluation, the information that we get in the evaluation process is an absolute gift that helps us move forward the next time. And so that's where when we create these big goals, we're going to break our quarterly revenue record this quarter. We're going to break it, or we're going to, this overarching goal. When I'm a member of the team, being able to break my part into some sub goals and getting some manageable goals that I can meet, that starts to create momentum, that starts to create confidence. Confidence only comes through achievement. I can't manufacture confidence. I can't give you confidence. We have to go earn confidence. And so that's where we try to get people to focus in and not get so anxious, overwhelmed by the overarching goal, the big goal, and start to look at where we can actually start making progress every day. And that's the concept that I share in the book about how to create sub goals.
And I agree with you on that. The biggest thing that I see on the business side is making sure you pick the right things to be held accountable to.
Yes.
And the right goals. Because whatever we always say, whatever you measure will get improved, or you set a goal, people will achieve it. But a lot of times there are unintended consequences. And so you've got to be very careful in what you're putting the number to and ensuring that it's driving things the direction you want it to go.
I think so many times we confuse activity with achievement. And I think so many times we gravitate to what we want to do because we already know we're good at it instead of what we need to do. And so that's the biggest, that's where the focus comes in. You have to have that winning tool of honesty. What needs to be done? And then that's what needs to be measured. That's what needs to be evaluated. And I'm really good at talking. And so if you evaluate me on how much I talk in the team meetings or how much I talk at practice, but what am I saying? What am I actually saying? It's not about how well I say something. It's what am I getting across to the players? What am I getting across to my team and my business and my athletic team and my organization? Does it get out of my mouth, out of my brain, out of my mouth, into their brain that they understand so then they can move forward and execute? And so it's so important that we're doing what needs to be done and not necessarily what we want to be done.
Yeah, I hear that a lot. Oh, people are all so busy and everyone's running around and nothing's getting done. They're all running in circles or making a mess or creating a fire that they're then working on putting out. And it seems to be the norm. And so part of that is to create good values. And you had a question towards the end of the book that I really liked. And that's the question of, is this a person of good character who loves our values? Because I can teach people skills. I really can't teach them values. It's difficult to do that.
If we could, then everybody would have good values, right? That's what I say. I tell anyone I'm coaching, attitude, effort, values. I wish I could make that decision for everyone, because everyone would have great values, they'd have great effort, they'd have a great attitude. But over a 30-year coaching career, I understand that those are things that you're responsible for. And if I can't teach them, I have to hire them. I have to pay attention. And there's no way to have great culture with low values. It's just not going to happen. And so we have to be mindful of that when we are attracting talent. We have to pay attention to that.
I think that came up this year in the NFL draft, didn't it? It was a big culture issue.
Certainly appeared to, yeah.
At least that's what I heard. I don't
Yeah.
pay enough attention to know for sure, but it was enough that it made the news.
Exactly.
What's your secret to living an abundant life?
Gratitude. Gratitude is the focus of an abundant life. And when I get my focus on what I have and what my blessings are and what my opportunities have been and what my experiences have informed me on, and I'm grateful for those, and I'm grateful for the challenges, and I'm grateful for the successes, gratitude helps me live an abundant life.
I think it's our number one answer. What did you learn later in life that you wish you would have learned sooner?
That success, no shortcuts to success, that success takes time, and don't be so hard on, don't be so focused on short-term success, because I made a lot of bad decisions, a lot of messes that I had to, that were harder for me to undo than had I just not ever made the mess. So, and I don't even know if that's knowable, but that's what I would have loved to have known, maybe, although I'm, again, grateful for all the mistakes I made, because I think they really shaped me and informed me. But that's probably the biggest advice that I would give anyone in my position. Just have some patience, but be extremely honest, hardworking, and disciplined, but have some patience when it comes to results.
I like to learn from other people's mistakes.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
don't want to have to make them myself.
Exactly.
I think this next question's right up your alley. If you were to give an 18-year-old one specific piece of wisdom, what would it be?
Invest in your character. Invest in your character. It will take you places. It will give you opportunities. It will help your decision making. Invest in your character. Resist the urge to hang around low character situations that maybe have the allure of some short-term pleasure or some immediate pleasure, and really invest in your character. Invest in getting around great mentors. Find people who you can look down the road and say, I'd like to be like that person, and just make sure they're really high character, and invest in your character, and it'll be an unbelievable investment in an 18-year-old's life.
It is. And unfortunately, social media isn't bringing them the good news every day. So they get bombarded with a lot of bad choices, not as many good choices, unfortunately.
That's right.
If people would like to learn more about you and your services and the book, how do they do that?
So CoachMatthewMitchell.com, we have all of our services, we have some fantastic leadership content that is simplified and is ready for you to implement into your company. And then we have some opportunities where our company can come into yours and help you move forward. And really, what we try to work diligently on is solving underperformance. So if you feel like your team is underperforming, we're going to come in and help you with your teamwork. We're not going to advise you on your area of expertise. You're the expert in your field, but we are experts in teamwork. And so we can really get your organization to performing at an excellent level. And so that's at CoachMatthewMitchell.com. All of our offerings are there. I have a podcast, The Coach Matthew Mitchell Show. I'd love for people to check that out if they ever are looking for some good leadership content. We try to have some fun with that. And the book, Ready to Win, How Great Leaders Succeed Through Preparation, that's available anywhere you buy books online. And it's a USA Today bestseller and has helped a lot of people. And so I think it's a great place to help activate and elevate your leadership through the use of preparation, world-class preparation. And if you want to follow the basketball team, we're at Cougars.com at the University of Houston, and we're looking forward to a great season in 25-26.
That's awesome. We'll put that all in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Rocky, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Hey, thanks for checking out the full unedited video of the Richer Soul podcast. You can get the full audio podcast with intro, outro, and a ton more details here on YouTube or whatever your favorite podcast player is. Don't forget, we've got hundreds of episodes for you to go back through, and you can also get episode information on the Richer Soul website as well. Don't forget to subscribe so you're automatically updated as to what's going on and every time we release a new episode. The first few episodes of the Richer Soul podcast actually lay out the entire framework that everything is built on over all of these years. So check them out as well. Thanks for listening.